A poor girl clutches a basket of candy and pleads with the young billionaire. "Please, sir, if I don't sell everything, my brother won't eat today." And his reaction was unbelievable. Grayson Bennett pushed the glass door of the skyscraper harder than he intended. The sound echoed through the lobby as he adjusted the tie that felt like it was choking him. 3 hours of meetings had drained his energy and patience. "Mr. Bennett, your car will be here in 5 minutes." The security guard's voice sounded distant as Grayson waved absent-mindedly. "I'll walk a bit, Richard. Tell the driver he doesn't need to come." The guard seemed surprised, but Grayson was already leaving. The contrast between the building's air conditioning and the city's heat hit him like a punch. 16 floors above, his office was a sanctuary of silence with a view of the entire skyline. Down here, it was a completely different world. He loosened his tie and took a deep breath. The streets pulsed with a life so different from what existed in conference rooms. Vendors, tourists, everyday people rushing to catch the subway. Grayson walked aimlessly, trying to clear his mind of the numbers and charts from the presentation. It was on the 3rd block that he saw the girl. She was much too small to be alone out there. Her messy brown hair fell over wide, watchful eyes that studied every person passing by. In front of her was an old basket with brightly colored candies, arranged by hue. "Candy, mister. $1 each." Grayson stopped. The girl's voice was steady, almost rehearsed, but her hands, small and dirty, trembled slightly. "How much for the whole basket?" he asked, crouching down to her eye level. The girl frowned, confused. It seemed she had never heard that question before. "I don't know. There's a lot of candy." "What's your name?" "Haley," she answered, studying the man in the expensive suit with suspicion. "Nice to meet you, Haley." "I'm Grayson," he smiled, but the girl's expression remained serious. "Why are you selling candy all by yourself?" Haley looked around before answering, as if checking that no one was listening. "If I don't sell everything, my brother doesn't get dinner tonight." Her words hit him like lightning. Direct, with no drama or self-pity, just a cruel fact stated with the blunt simplicity only children can manage. Grayson felt a knot in his throat. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. A distant echo of his own childhood knocking at the door of his conscience. For a moment, he saw himself in her, skinny, hungry Graysons with the same shadows in his eyes. "I'll take it all." He pulled out his wallet from the inside pocket of his jacket. Haley's eyes widened. "All of it? All of it? How much do you think it's worth?" The girl thought for a moment, counting mentally. $73. Her voice betrayed the uncertainty of someone afraid to lose the sale by asking too much. Grayson took out a $100 bill and handed it to her. "Keep the change." Haley held the bill as if it might break. She had never seen so much money at once. "You don't need to take the candy," she said suddenly. "You can sell them again." Grayson pointed to the basket. The girl remained still, suspicious of the unexpected kindness. "Why?" "Because I know what it's like to have a hungry sibling," he simply replied. Something changed in Haley's gaze, an unspoken understanding. She tucked the bill into an inside pocket of her worn-out jacket, adjusted the basket, and smiled for the first time, not a smile of joy, but of relief. "Thank you, mister." Grayson nodded and stood up. He began to walk away but glanced back one last time. Haley was already approaching another passerby, as if nothing had happened, as if her life didn't depend on that basket of candy. Hours later, in the penthouse of his apartment, Grayson swirled the whiskey in his glass as he observed the city lights. The encounter with the girl lingered in his mind like a freshly opened wound. He remembered being 8 years old and his mother watering down soup so it would last another meal. The constant feeling of an empty stomach, splitting half a sandwich with his younger sister. The shame of wearing donated clothes at school. 25 years had passed, but hunger has a way of searing itself into memory. The taste of need never completely disappears, even among fancy restaurant dinners and million-dollar business meetings. He placed the glass on the coffee table and walked to the window. Somewhere down there, Haley and her brother might be having their first decent meal in days. But what about tomorrow? And the day after? $100 wouldn't last forever. He tried to push the thought away. He had done his good deed for the day. There were hundreds of kids like her throughout the city. He couldn't save everyone. He took a long shower and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. Haley's face appeared every time he closed his eyes, that gaze, far too old for a 5-year-old, haunting him. He turned over in bed, trying to think of the next day's presentation, last quarter's numbers, satisfied investors. Nothing worked. "If I don't sell everything, my brother won't eat tonight." The sentence echoed mercilessly. When the clock read 3:17 a.m, Grayson sat on the edge of his bed. He ran his hands over his face and made a decision. He needed to find her again, to learn where she lived, how she lived, whether someone was caring for her and her brother. It wasn't just charity or guilt, it was something deeper, a connection he couldn't explain. That girl, with her tiny basket of candy and burdens far too great for her small shoulders, had broken something inside him, a carefully built wall between his past and present. He lay down again, calmer. Tomorrow he would go back to that street. Tomorrow he would find Haley, and this time he wouldn't let a random encounter end with just $100 and a goodbye. As sleep finally claimed him, Grayson realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business, acquisitions, or profits. He was thinking of a basket of colorful candy and the eyes of a little girl carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, and somehow that felt more important than anything else. The meeting room at Bennett Enterprises buzzed with excited voices. The charts on the screen showed green arrows pointing upward, an exceptional quarter. Grayson should have been elated. Instead, he drummed his fingers on the glass table, distracted. "Mr. Bennett, your thoughts on the expansion?" Grayson blinked, returning to reality. All eyes were fixed on him. He forced a smile and straightened in his chair. "Apologies, could you repeat the question?" His assistant, Clara, frowned. In 15 years of working together, she had never seen him so distracted in an important meeting. "I suggest a 10-minute break," she said, efficient as always. When the room emptied, Clara approached him. "Are you okay, Grayson? You seem a million miles away today." "I'm fine." He stood up, rubbing his eyes. "Just a bad night's sleep." He didn't mention the real reason. A 5-year-old girl with a basket of candy who wouldn't leave his thoughts. "Water," Clara offered. "Coffee, as strong as possible." Clara smiled and left, giving him a moment alone with his thoughts. He walked over to the panoramic window. Down below, people looked like ants, always rushing, each living their own life. Somewhere among them, Haley was selling candy again, perhaps. Had the money lasted? Did her brother get to eat? He closed his eyes and dove into memories he rarely revisited. Manhattan 30 years ago. A cramped apartment he shared with his parents and sister. His father, Thomas Bennett, working 2 jobs and still never having enough money. His mother taking on sewing work, accepting any job she could find. He recalled one particular night vividly. He was 7. His father came home late, exhausted, with a small takeout box of Chinese food. "This was all I could manage today," he had said, shame weighing down every word. His mother smiled, dividing the meal into 4 tiny portions, 1 bowl for each. Grayson noticed how his parents ate slowly, pretending to be full, while he and his sister devoured their shares. Years later, he realized they barely ate so the kids would have more. Another memory, his 10th birthday. No party, no friends invited, just a tiny cupcake with a single candle. His father cried when Grayson blew it out, the only gift they could afford. The next morning, Grayson found his father sleeping upright, still in uniform, having worked an overnight shift to buy that cupcake. "Your coffee, extra strong." Clara's voice brought him back to the present. People were trickling back into the meeting room. Grayson thanked her and took a sip, the bitter liquid sharpening his focus, but not enough. For the rest of the day, he signed papers, took calls, and attended 2 more meetings, all on autopilot. His mind constantly drifted back to Haley and the brother he hadn't even met. The girl's resolve, the huge responsibilities on such tiny shoulders, just as he'd felt decades ago. At 5 in the afternoon, he stood up abruptly. "Clara, cancel the rest of my appointments. But the video conference with Tokyo, reschedule for tomorrow. Say something urgent came up." Clara studied him, concerned but nodded. She knew him too well to question his tone. 20 minutes later, Grayson was walking down the same stretch of sidewalk where he'd found Haley the day before. He wore simpler clothes this time, jeans and a button-down shirt without a tie, sneakers. He wanted to be less conspicuous. He wandered for almost an hour, scanning every corner, every alley. No sign of the girl. As the sky began to darken, discouragement grew. Maybe she'd found a different spot, or maybe the $100 had been enough and she didn't need to work today. He was about to give up when he saw her. Haley was walking hurriedly, the same empty basket swinging on her arm. She looked even smaller, without the determined posture of a vendor, just a tired child at the end of a long day. Grayson followed from a distance, careful not to be noticed. Haley turned onto a quieter street, then another even less busy. The surroundings changed drastically. Luxury buildings gave way to run-down structures and abandoned lots. She stopped in front of an old trailer, parked at the back of a vacant lot ringed by a low, rusty fence. Grayson hid behind a tree, watching. Haley knocked 3 times on the metal door in a specific rhythm. The door opened, and a small boy practically leaped into her arms. His hair was blonde and disheveled, his clothes too big for his thin frame. He couldn't have been older than 3. "Caleb, careful, you'll knock me over." Haley's voice sounded different, lighter, more childlike. The boy said something Grayson couldn't hear. Haley laughed and showed him the empty basket, then pulled out a handful of crumpled bills from her pocket. The boy's eyes lit up. They both went inside, shutting the door. Grayson waited a few minutes and cautiously approached. The trailer looked even more dilapidated up close. Peeling paint, taped-up windows, makeshift concrete blocks for steps. A makeshift home, at best. One of the windows had a torn curtain, allowing him a glimpse of the interior. A cramped space, but surprisingly organized. Haley was putting away what she seemed to have bought on her way. Bread, milk, some fruit Grayson couldn't identify. Little Caleb sat on a thin mattress on the floor, playing with folded paper shapes. There were no adults, no sign of parents or guardians, just 2 kids alone, surviving however they could. The scene was painfully familiar. Grayson remembered looking after his younger sister while their parents worked, making simple sandwiches at age 9, telling stories to distract her from hunger. But he and his sister had parents who came back. They had a secure roof. Haley and Caleb seemed utterly alone. A sound startled Grayson. Haley approached the window to close it. Their eyes almost met. He stepped back quickly, hiding in the shadows. He returned to his car, parked several blocks away, with the image of that trailer burned into his mind. On the drive home, the contrast between his luxurious penthouse and the kids' makeshift shelter felt like a silent accusation. In the comfort of his apartment, Grayson couldn't eat dinner. The fancy, well-prepared meal seemed offensive when he thought of Haley and Caleb splitting a simple loaf of bread. He sat in his personal study and opened his laptop, researching homeless children, legal aid procedures, and relevant social services. The information was disheartening. Bureaucracy, delays, uncertainties. The system was slow, and those kids needed help immediately. He closed the computer and stepped onto the balcony. The city gleamed under the night sky, indifferent to the struggles it sheltered. Somewhere in that sea of lights, 2 children slept in a rundown trailer, counting coins to survive another day. Grayson made a decision. He wouldn't involve the authorities, at least not yet. He would help directly, with food, clothes, maybe improvements to the trailer. He'd approach them gradually, earn their trust. He lay down, calmer now that he had a plan, but sleep was slow to come. When he finally drifted off, he dreamed of his father working late, his mother counting coins at the kitchen table, his sister asking for more food. And in the dream, his father looked at him with tired eyes and said, "One day, when you can, remember those who were left behind." Grayson woke before his alarm, absolutely certain it was no coincidence he'd found Haley. It was a chance to honor a silent promise he'd made to his father so many years ago, a chance to truly make a difference in someone's life. The grocery store was nearly empty at that hour. Grayson pushed his cart down the aisles, carefully selecting each item: rice, beans, pasta, canned goods with a long shelf life, fresh fruit, bread, milk, eggs. In the hygiene aisle, he added soap, shampoo, toothpaste, and new toothbrushes. He stopped in the children's section. Exactly how old was Caleb? He looked about 3, but it was hard to tell. The boy was tiny, likely malnourished. Grayson grabbed diapers in different sizes, baby wipes, and diaper rash cream. He didn't know if Caleb still wore diapers, but better to be prepared. A saleswoman approached, smiling. "Helping a charity organization, sir." Grayson hesitated. Explaining the situation in detail felt too complicated. "Something like that," he answered, turning back to the cart. At the register, the cashier gave him a curious look at the peculiar assortment of items. Grayson ignored it and paid in cash. He carried 6 large bags to his car. It was 10 in the morning when he parked 2 blocks from the trailer. He preferred not to draw attention with his luxury vehicle. Distributing the bags between both hands, he walked to the vacant lot. The place looked even more desolate by daylight. The rusted metal trailer stood out against overgrown weeds and piles of trash. There wasn't a real fence, just scraps of old fencing and twisted wire. He approached carefully. Through the window, he saw movement, a small silhouette. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door 3 times. Silence. He knocked again, more gently. "Haley?" "It's me, Grayson. We met the day before yesterday." Light footsteps approached. The handle turned slowly, and the door opened just enough to reveal part of Haley's face. Her eyes widened in recognition. "You're the guy who bought all the candy," she said. Not as a question, but a statement. Grayson smiled, lifting the bags. "I brought some things for you. I can leave them right here." Suspicion was clear in her eyes. She opened the door a bit wider, studying the bags. "Why?" It was a simple question, carrying the weight of someone who learned early on that nothing comes free. "Because I understand," Grayson said, keeping his voice soft and calm. "I know what it's like to have to manage on your own. Too early." Haley frowned, pondering his words. Movement behind her revealed Caleb, partially hidden behind a box, watching the stranger with wide eyes. "Your brother?" Grayson asked, waving discreetly at the little boy, who quickly ducked out of sight. Haley glanced back at him, then at Grayson. "That's Caleb. He's shy." Grayson crouched down, placing the bags on the makeshift concrete step. "There's food in here, hygiene items, some clothes I thought might fit, and water." For a moment, he saw conflict in the girl's eyes, need wrestling with pride and distrust. Finally, she said, "Thanks. But you really didn't have to." She tried to sound grown up, but was still just a child trying to be strong. "It's no trouble," Grayson assured her. "When I was a kid, sometimes we had nothing to eat at home. I know how hard it is." This revelation seemed to surprise Haley. She studied the man before her, expensive watch, polished shoes, fine shirt. "But you're rich now," Grayson smiled at the childlike frankness. "I am now, but it wasn't always this way." A sound drew both their attention. Caleb again, curious about the bags. Grayson took the opportunity to peer more closely inside the trailer through the slightly open door. The space was tiny but impressively organized. A thin mattress covered with clean, though faded, sheets took up nearly half the area. Cardboard boxes served as makeshift cabinets, drawings taped to the wall, likely Caleb's handiwork. A small table with 2 stools, everything old, yet kept as tidy as possible. "Do you two live here alone?" Grayson asked, trying not to sound intrusive. Haley's expression hardened. "We know how to take care of ourselves." Her defensive tone was answer enough. Grayson nodded. "I'm sure you do. You're very responsible for your age." Caleb crept closer. Drawn by the bags, Haley whispered something to him. The boy reached out for one of the bags, where the corner of a chocolate bar was visible. "Go ahead," Grayson encouraged, smiling. "There's more in there." Haley hesitated but pulled out the chocolate bar and handed it to Caleb, who clutched it to his chest like a treasure. "I should go now," Grayson said, sensing prolonged interaction might make them uncomfortable. "May I come back tomorrow, bring more things?" Again, that flicker of conflict in Haley's expression. She glanced at her brother, the bags, then at Grayson. "If you want," she answered, shrugging as if indifferent. Grayson nodded and stepped back. "See you tomorrow, then." He started to walk away, but Haley's voice stopped him. "Mr. Grayson, thanks." The gratitude, though terse, was genuine. Grayson smiled and waved as he left. He glanced back once and saw Haley and Caleb in the doorway, hauling the bags inside. For a moment, little Caleb waved timidly before disappearing into the trailer. On his way back to the car, Grayson made mental notes of what else he might bring next time. More suitable clothing for both of them, perhaps toys for Caleb, school supplies for Haley. Did she even attend school? More importantly, he needed to earn their trust, learn their full story. How two children so young ended up living alone in an abandoned trailer. The first step was taken. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Grayson got into his car and turned the key, feeling a determination he hadn't experienced in years. Those kids needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. Now he knew where to find them, and he would return tomorrow, the next day, and for as long as it took. As he drove back downtown, one thing became clear in his mind. Haley and Caleb's lives were about to change, and in ways he didn't yet fully grasp, so was his. The next few days established a routine. Grayson arrived around the same time, in late afternoon, when the sun began to lose its intensity. Each visit, he brought a different bag, sometimes food, sometimes clothes, sometimes hygiene items. He never showed up empty-handed. By the third visit, Haley no longer waited behind the door. She sat on the makeshift steps outside, as though she knew exactly when he would appear. Little Caleb still hid inside, but his curious eyes peeked out from the window. "I brought something special today," Grayson announced on the fourth visit, taking a seat on the concrete step beside Haley. The girl eyed the brightly colored bag with suspicion. "What is it?" "It's not for you," Grayson replied with a smile. "It's for Caleb." As if he'd heard his name, the boy appeared in the half-open doorway. His blonde hair was now cleaner, likely thanks to the products Grayson had brought days ago. Grayson pulled a small red toy car from the bag, not very big but shiny, with wheels that really turned. Caleb's eyes went wide. "Can I give it to him?" Grayson asked Haley, respecting her role as her brother's protector. Haley hesitated but nodded. Grayson held out the toy. "It's yours, Caleb." The boy looked at his sister, who gestured approval. He slowly approached and took the car from Grayson's hand. The moment his fingers touched the shiny plastic, it happened. The first genuine smile, one that lit up his entire face. "What do you say, Caleb?" Haley prompted. "Thank you," the boy mumbled, hugging the toy. A warmth spread through Grayson's chest. That smile, so simple, so natural, was worth more than any million-dollar deal he'd ever closed. Caleb sat right there on the packed dirt, pushing the car back and forth, making engine noises with his mouth, completely absorbed in his new treasure. "He loves cars," Haley remarked, watching her brother. "He always stops at the toy store window when we walk by." For the first time, Haley had initiated a conversation. Grayson considered that a small victory. "And you? What do you like?" he asked. The girl shrugged. "I don't have much time to like stuff." The response, so mature and sad, broke Grayson's heart. "Have you two been here a long time? Alone, I mean?" Haley was silent for several seconds, as if deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she spoke. "Almost a year. Our dad left when Caleb was 2. He just never came home from work one day." Her eyes fixed on a distant point. "Mom said he found another family, a better one." Grayson didn't interrupt, letting her speak at her own pace. "Then Mom got sick. She coughed and had fevers and was always so tired." Haley fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. "One day she said she was going to the hospital to get medicine. She told me to watch Caleb until she came back that night." Her voice faltered slightly. "She never came back. Not that night. Not the next day." "How long has it been?" Grayson asked gently. "I'm not sure. Lots of days." Caleb still wore diapers. Grayson did a mental calculation. If Caleb was around 3 now and all this happened when he was still in diapers, so how did you end up here, in this trailer? "We couldn't stay in the apartment. The landlord came, and I hid with Caleb. After he left, I took our stuff and we left." Haley spoke in a disturbingly matter-of-fact tone. We walked a lot, slept on the street a few nights. Then we found this abandoned trailer. The story, told with such simplicity, concealed a harrowing truth. A 4-year-old girl, alone with a baby, wandering the streets. Didn't anyone try to help you? Neighbors? Friends? Mom always said not to trust anyone, that they'd take us away, separate me and Caleb. Haley looked at her brother, still immersed in playing with his car. I couldn't let that happen. Grayson felt a lump in his throat. This child had taken on a staggering amount of responsibility. You know, Haley, I also grew up in a home where we barely had anything. She eyed him with skepticism. But you drive a big car and have fancy clothes. Now I do. But when I was your age, sometimes we didn't even have dinner. Grayson studied his hands, recalling, my dad worked 2 jobs. My mom sewed for extra money. Even then, it was never enough. Haley watched him intently, looking for signs of a lie. Once, I spent 3 days eating only stale bread with water and sugar. My younger sister cried from hunger. I gave her my share. Like I do with Caleb, Haley whispered. Exactly like you do, Grayson said, smiling gently. You're very brave, you know that. The girl didn't reply, but something shifted in her expression. The distrust in her eyes receded slightly, replaced by understanding, shared experiences bridging the gap between them. The sun began to set. Caleb, tired of playing, inched closer to Grayson until he was practically sitting beside him, still holding his car. It's getting cold, Grayson noted, feeling the temperature drop. Haley stood. We better go inside. She looked at Grayson and, after a moment's hesitation, added, You can come too, so we don't have to leave the stuff outside. The invitation, phrased so practically, was a huge step of trust. Grayson nodded, trying not to show his surprise. Sure. Thank you. The inside of the trailer was even smaller than it looked from outside. It couldn't have been more than a few square feet. A tiny camping stove occupied one corner, along with a box serving as a pantry. The thin mattress took up nearly half the floor space. A makeshift curtain divided off what was probably a tiny bathroom. Still, despite the evident poverty, everything was tidy and organized. Colorful drawings by Caleb covered part of one wall, taped up. A few clothes were folded in cardboard boxes. A battery-powered lantern hung from the ceiling by a string. It's small, Haley said, as though apologizing. It's cozy, Grayson corrected, and you keep it really clean. That's important. A hint of pride lit up her face. Caleb, now completely comfortable, grabbed Grayson's hand and pulled him over to show off his drawings. Car, he said, pointing to colorful scribbles. Tree, house. They're wonderful, Grayson praised, crouching down to see them better. You're an artist. Caleb beamed, proud, and continued displaying his treasures. A shiny pebble, a bird feather, a colorful bottle cap. Haley watched with a mix of caution and relief. Her little brother, normally so shy around strangers, had opened up to Grayson. Then Grayson noticed the basket in a corner, worn and fraying in places, the same one Haley used to sell candy. So small, yet their only source of income. Is that how you buy food? He asked, pointing to the basket. Haley nodded. I get candy at the corner store. The man there gives me a discount. She paused. But now there are fewer people on the street. Sometimes I come back with a lot of candy left and only a little money. Grayson glanced at the basket, then back at the siblings. A decision formed in his mind. Haley, you don't have to sell candy anymore. The girl frowned. How will we buy food? I'll bring whatever you need. Food, clothes, anything. You won't go hungry or lack anything. I promise. Haley swallowed hard. Her eyes revealed her inner turmoil, wanting to believe but terrified of another disappointment. Why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you doing this for us? Grayson thought for a moment. Because someone should have done it for me when I was a kid, he said gently. And because you deserve better than this trailer and a basket of candy. Silence filled the tiny space. Caleb, oblivious to the gravity of the conversation, played with his new car. Haley seemed to be testing the sincerity of Grayson's words. People always leave, she finally said, almost in a whisper. Not everyone. Grayson sensed it was time to go. He didn't want to overwhelm them. He stood, straightening his shirt. "I'll come back tomorrow, okay? I'll bring dinner." Haley nodded, walking him to the door. Caleb waved excitedly, babbling something about car and come back. At the threshold, Haley looked up, meeting Grayson's eyes. For the first time, her expression was completely open, vulnerable. "If you do come back for real." Her words were simple but carried the weight of every abandonment that child had endured. It wasn't a casual request, it was a test of trust. "I will come back," Grayson promised. "Always." As he walked back to his car, Grayson realized this was no longer just a charitable act. He genuinely cared about these children, their stories, their lives, their future, in a way he couldn't rationally explain. The next day, as promised, he returned, and the day after that, and the next. A week passed. He reorganized his schedule, delegated meetings, worked remotely when possible. Nothing seemed more important than being there for Haley and Caleb. It was on his 10th visit that he sensed something was wrong. Caleb was quiet, seated on Haley's lap. His cheeks were flushed, and he didn't rush over to show off his drawings as usual. "What's going on?" Grayson asked, kneeling to their level. "He's hot," Haley explained, her worry evident. "Since last night. I've been giving him water, but it's not helping." Grayson touched the boy's forehead. It was burning. The child was breathing heavily, and a dry cough occasionally shook his small body. "This is a high fever, Haley. He needs a doctor." Panic flashed across her face. "We can't go to the hospital. They'll ask questions. They'll take us away." "He's sick," Grayson insisted gently. "It could be serious." Caleb coughed again, a harsh sound that didn't belong in the chest of a little boy. Haley held him tighter, rocking him gently. "What if we don't come back?" she whispered, fear shining in her eyes. Grayson took her small hand in his. "I promise you'll come back. Together. I'll take care of this." Haley looked at her brother. Caleb's eyes were half closed, clearly lacking energy. She made her decision. "Okay, but you have to stay with us the whole time." "All the time," Grayson agreed, as he helped the girl gather their things and wrap Caleb in a clean blanket. Grayson realized they were entering a new chapter. It wouldn't be easy to explain at the hospital. Questions would be asked, authorities might get involved. But looking at those two children, Haley trying to be brave, Caleb burning with fever, Grayson knew he'd do whatever it took to protect them, whatever it took to keep his promise. And as he carried Caleb to the car, Haley clinging to his free hand, he understood that his life would never be the same. The pediatric ER waiting room was bustling. Nurses hurried down corridors. Anxious parents comforted crying children. Grayson sat rigidly, Haley glued to his side, both their eyes on the door behind which Caleb had disappeared 20 minutes earlier. The nurse had tried to convince Haley to wait outside, but she'd refused, clinging to her brother. Only the promise that she'd see him soon had persuaded her to sit and wait. "Is it going to take long?" Haley asked for the third time, her small voice betraying a fear she tried to hide. "We'll be able to go in soon," Grayson said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The questions at the reception desk had been challenging. Relationship to the children, documents, medical history. Grayson improvised as best he could, claiming to be a close relative temporarily caring for them. His platinum credit card and a few discreet bills pressed into the administrative supervisor's hand smoothed the process. "Mr. Bennett?" A young doctor with a stethoscope around her neck approached. "Could you come with me, please?" Haley leapt to her feet, grabbing Grayson's hand. Together, they followed the doctor down a hallway to a small room where Caleb lay. He looked even tinier in the hospital bed, connected to a monitor with an oxygen mask covering much of his face. His eyes lit up when he saw his sister. Haley ran to him, gently touching his hand. "It's okay, Caleb, I'm here," she whispered, her voice maternal enough to break anyone's heart. The doctor gestured for Grayson to step back into the hallway. Reluctantly, he asked Haley to stay with her brother for a moment. Out in the corridor, the doctor's expression turned serious. "Mr. Bennett, Caleb has early-stage bacterial pneumonia. We caught it in time, but it's concerning." Grayson's chest tightened. "How serious is it?" "With proper treatment, he should make a full recovery. We've started IV antibiotics and oxygen therapy. She hesitated. But there's something that worries me more than this current infection. What is it? Their living conditions. The doctor looked him in the eye. We found signs of prolonged exposure to humidity, mold, possible mild malnutrition. Caleb's antibodies are low, indicating a compromised immune system from inadequate conditions. Grayson swallowed hard. The trailer, no matter how hard Haley tried to keep it clean, was damp and precarious. I understand. What do you recommend? Medically, he needs a clean, dry, heated environment to recover and avoid relapse. She lowered her voice. Mr. Bennett, I have to ask, what is your real relationship to these children? Haley barely speaks to our staff, but it's clear she depends on you. Grayson hesitated. The truth could complicate everything. I'm caring for them temporarily. I'm a family friend. The doctor didn't seem convinced, but nodded. As a physician, I must be clear. If Caleb returns to the same environment where he got pneumonia, he'll likely get sick again. And every infection makes his respiratory system more vulnerable to the next. Her words hung in the air like a sentence. Grayson thanked her and went back to the room, where Haley was humming softly to her brother, who seemed calmer now that she was there. During the next few hours, as Grayson watched the siblings, an internal conflict raged. He couldn't just take them back to the trailer. Caleb's health was at stake. But what was the alternative? Social services could mean almost certain separation. A temporary shelter would be traumatic, and he'd promised Haley he wouldn't let them be split up. Grayson Bennett did not break promises. As night fell, Haley fought sleep, determined to stay awake at her brother's bedside. Caleb was sleeping now, fever reduced thanks to the medication. Is he going to be okay? Haley asked, her voice trembling with exhaustion. Yes, he will, Grayson replied, sitting beside her. But the doctor said he needs a warm, clean place so he doesn't get sick again. Haley, always so perceptive, locked eyes with him. We can't go back to the trailer. It wasn't a question, but a statement. That childlike maturity of hers continued to astonish him. No, Haley, at least not right now. The silence that followed was heavy. The girl looked at her sleeping brother, his small chest rising and falling more steadily now. Will they separate us? She finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. Send us to different places. The vulnerability in her question pierced Grayson like a spear. He knelt in front of her, holding her gaze. No. I promised I wouldn't let that happen, remember? She nodded, still not fully convinced. I have an idea, Grayson continued. What if you two stay with me for a while? I have a big apartment with spare rooms, just until Caleb gets completely better. The offer hung in the air. Haley looked at him with an intensity far beyond her years, weighing the risks like an adult. Is it far from the trailer? She asked, ever pragmatic. A bit, but we can go back to get your things. And Caleb's drawings, and the car you gave him. Everything. We'll bring anything you want. She bit her lip, thinking, what about after he gets better? The question caught Grayson off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead himself. We can decide that later, together. Right now, the important thing is Caleb's health. Haley looked again at her sleeping brother, so fragile in that hospital bed. Her mind was already made up before she spoke. Okay, we'll go with you. Then quickly added, but just until he's better. Grayson felt a rush of relief, mixed with something more complex, a sense of responsibility far beyond a few friendly visits. Suddenly, he had two lives completely dependent on him. Agreed, just until he's better, he said, though he knew deep down everything had changed forever. That night, once Haley finally succumbed to sleep in the hospital chair, Grayson made calls, rearranged his schedule for the coming weeks, cancelled trips and meetings. Clara, his assistant, was surprised by his instructions to prepare the apartment, but asked no questions. The doctor on duty informed him that Caleb would need to stay in the hospital for at least 3 days to ensure the antibiotics were working. Grayson used that time to get everything ready, from bedding to toys, from kid-friendly food to child-appropriate hygiene products. He returned alone to the trailer to gather their belongings. The place seemed even more forlorn now that he knew its occupants. He carefully collected every one of Caleb's drawings, their few clothes, the toy car, some worn books, and, of course, the candy basket. He knew how much it meant to Haley. On the third afternoon, the doctor finally discharged Caleb with a list of medications, follow-up recommendations, and a genuine look of concern that said more than words. "Take good care of them," she simply said, handing Grayson the prescriptions. "I will," Grayson replied, with a conviction that surprised even him. As he helped Haley settle Caleb into the back seat, he realized he wasn't just taking them to his home. He was making room for them in his life, a space he didn't know existed until he met a little girl selling candy on the sidewalk. "Where are we going?" Caleb asked, still weak but curious, staring out the car window. "Home," Haley answered before Grayson could speak. "For now." Grayson smiled in the rearview mirror, started the engine and drove away, leaving the hospital and, symbolically, the children's old life behind. And maybe, he thought, his own as well. The elevator rode silently to the top floor. Caleb, still weak from pneumonia, was cradled in Grayson's arms, while Haley clung to his side, gripping a small backpack with the belongings they'd brought from the hospital. No one spoke. The only sound was Caleb's still, slightly labored breathing. When the doors opened directly into the apartment's private foyer, Haley took a hesitant step out of the elevator. Her eyes went wide as she took in the space. "Here," she whispered. Grayson nodded, shifting Caleb in his arms to reach for the key. "Yes, this is my apartment." Haley remained at the threshold, as though crossing it might be too great a leap. Grayson understood her hesitation. "Shall we go in?" "Caleb needs to rest." The mention of her brother was enough to propel Haley forward. She always put his needs above her own fear or distrust. The apartment was a penthouse duplex with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the entire city below. The decor was elegant but not ostentatious. Neutral tones, contemporary furniture, and carefully selected artwork. Everything was clean, organized, and clearly expensive. "It's so big," Haley said, spinning slowly to take it all in. The contrast with the trailer couldn't have been more stark. The trailer's entire floor space would have fit easily in this living room. "Let me show you where you'll sleep," Grayson said, guiding them down a hallway. "I set up a room for both of you." He opened the door to a guest bedroom he'd rearranged over the last few days. The walls were a soft shade of blue, there was a full-size bed, and, in the corner, a small toddler bed with improvised railings. A low table by the window had new paper and crayons. A gentle lamp offered soft light. "I thought Caleb could use the smaller bed, close to you," he explained. "If you prefer, I can set up another room." Haley shook her head. "No, it's better if we stay together." Grayson laid Caleb gently on the larger bed for now. The boy was exhausted from the hospital discharge, but his eyes scanned the room curiously. "Mine?" he asked, pointing to the toddler bed. "Yes, that's your bed," Grayson confirmed. "And right here is yours, Maylie," he said, indicating the bigger bed. "So you'll be close to each other." Haley placed her backpack on the floor and walked slowly to the window. Below, the city spread out like a carpet of lights. She'd never seen New York from such a height. "It looks like another world," she murmured. Grayson gave her space to explore the room on her own. He sensed she needed time to process this drastic change. "I'll make something for us to eat," he said. "You two must be hungry. Make yourselves at home. This room is yours now." He left the door slightly ajar and headed to the kitchen. Though he rarely cooked, usually ordering in or letting a housekeeper handle meals, he felt the need to do something himself today. He opened the fridge, which Clara had thoughtfully stocked per his instructions. Eggs, milk, bread, fresh fruit, vegetables, meat. He decided on something simple and comforting. Pasta with a mild cheese sauce, small pieces of grilled chicken, and steamed vegetables. Kid-friendly food, easy on Caleb's recovering system. While he cooked, he occasionally heard faint murmurs from the bedroom. Haley was likely showing Caleb around, describing what she saw. 20 minutes later, Grayson returned to the bedroom. He found Haley sitting on the edge of the bed, gently combing Caleb's hair with her fingers. The boy appeared more alert now, pointing out the window at the city lights. "Dinner's ready," Grayson announced. "It's nothing fancy, but I hope you'll like it." Haley helped Caleb up. He was still weak, but insisted on walking, clutching his sister's hand. In the kitchen, Grayson had set the table with 3 plates, silverware, cloth napkins, and even a small vase of flowers in the center. It looked like something out of a decor magazine, a normal family about to share a meal, except they weren't a family. Not yet, Grayson thought, surprised at the direction of his own mind. He needs something to sit on, Haley observed pragmatically. He's too small for that chair. Oh, right. Grayson hadn't considered that. He quickly improvised with a few sturdy cushions from the living room. Is that better? Haley tested the arrangement and nodded. She helped Caleb climb up, then sat beside him. Grayson served moderate portions on each plate and took his seat. For a moment, no one moved, as if waiting for some signal to begin. You can go ahead, he encouraged. Haley picked up her fork, but before eating she helped Caleb grip his properly. The boy eyed the pasta suspiciously. It's good, Grayson assured him. Give it a try. Caleb took a small bite and his eyes lit up. Soon he was enthusiastically eating. Haley tasted hers more cautiously, but seemed to like it too. She ate slowly, with surprisingly polite manners for a child who'd grown up in such precarious conditions. Did your mom teach you to eat like that? Grayson asked, noticing how Haley gently corrected Caleb's posture. A flash of sadness crossed her face. She always said we could be poor but not rude. Something in that statement resonated deeply with Grayson. He remembered his own mother, saying something similar so many years ago. The rest of dinner was calm. Caleb, though still tired, seemed delighted with the meal. Haley remained vigilant, helping her brother and glancing occasionally at Grayson. After they finished, it was time for Caleb's medications. Grayson had organized them carefully on a tray. Antibiotics, cough syrup, fever reducer if needed. I can give it to him, Haley offered, extending her hand. Are you sure? Grayson asked, hesitant. The dosages have to be exact. I always handle his medicine, she said with a confidence that broke his heart. A 5-year-old shouldn't bear such responsibility. How about we do it together, he suggested. You help me remember, and I'll measure the doses. Sound good? It was a compromise. Haley nodded, understanding. Together they administered the meds. Caleb grimaced at the taste, but swallowed without complaint. Now it's bath and bedtime, Grayson announced. The doctor said Caleb needs plenty of rest. Haley tensed slightly. I'll bathe him. Grayson realized she was setting boundaries, areas where she maintained control over her brother. Her way of preserving her caretaker role, even in this new environment. Of course, he agreed. The bathroom in your room has everything you need. Clean towels, kids' soap, shampoo. I'll show you how the shower works. While Haley gave Caleb his bath, Grayson tidied the bedroom, making the beds. He placed the medicine on the nightstand along with a glass of water and a digital thermometer. He set the air conditioner to a comfortable temperature, not too warm to irritate Caleb's lungs, not too cool to affect his breathing. Half an hour later, Haley returned with Caleb in pajamas, a new set Grayson had bought. The boy's hair was clean and combed, his cheeks pink from the warm bath. He's sleepy, Haley informed him. Grayson nodded. Let's put him to bed then. Caleb settled onto the toddler bed, covered by a light but warm comforter. His thighs were heavy with sleep. Haley sat next to him, likely as she did every night in the trailer. Do you want me to tell you a story? Grayson offered. Caleb nodded, already drowsy. Haley looked surprised but didn't object. Grayson improvised, a simple tale about a brave boy and his equally brave sister who discovered a magical treasure. It wasn't elaborate, but Caleb smiled whenever he recognized them in the story. Before it ended, he was already asleep. Haley tucked the blanket around her brother and felt his forehead, checking his temperature, a gesture that had become automatic during his illness. He's better, she murmured, mostly to herself. Yes, he is. The medication is working. Grayson stood. You should rest too, Haley. It's been a long day. The girl nodded but made no move to lie down. I'll stay up a bit longer just to make sure he's okay. Grayson recognized her determination. No point in arguing. All right. I'll be in the next room if you need anything. Just call me. He started to leave, but Haley stopped him. Thank you, she said in a near whisper, for letting us stay, for helping Caleb. The simple, sincere gratitude moved Grayson deeply. You don't have to thank me, Haley. I'm glad you're here." He realized with some surprise that it was true. He really was glad to have them there. He left their door ajar and went to his own room. He took a quick shower and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind buzzed with worries and questions. The apartment that once felt so silent and peaceful was now filled with life. Two little lives that somehow had become entwined with his. After an hour of tossing, he got up silently and went to check on the kids. Through the slightly open door he peered inside. Caleb was sleeping soundly, his breathing more regular than it had been in days. Hayley had finally given in to exhaustion. She lay diagonally on the larger bed, still dressed, one arm extended toward her brother's bed, as if, even in sleep, she needed to protect him. Grayson slipped into the room and gently covered her with a light comforter. The girl didn't wake, she was too exhausted. He went to Caleb and carefully felt his forehead, still a bit warm, but nothing like the high fever before. He sank into the armchair in the corner, deciding to keep watch on Caleb's temperature through the night. He didn't trust himself to wake up if the boy needed something. It was safer to stay right there. As he watched the two children sleep, he felt something strange and new welling up inside him, a mix of protectiveness, concern, and something else, something that might be called belonging. His luxurious penthouse, once so empty and impersonal, suddenly felt like a home. Not because of the expensive furniture or breathtaking view, but because of these two children who, against all odds, had found their way into his once lonely life. Grayson had always had success, money, recognition, but something had always been missing, something he hadn't even known how to name. Now, sitting in that armchair, watching Hayley and Caleb, he realized what it was: connection, the feeling of being truly important to someone, not because of what he owned or achieved, but simply because he was there. The night wore on and Grayson remained vigilant. Every hour he gently checked Caleb's temperature, adjusted his blanket, ensured everything was fine. When the boy coughed in his sleep, Grayson was there to lift him slightly, helping him breathe more easily. When Hayley murmured something unintelligible in a restless dream, he touched her shoulder gently, calming her without waking her. Outside, the city never truly slept. Lights blinked, occasional cars passed by, urban life continued without pause. But here in this quiet room, something was taking shape, perhaps a family or at least a deeper connection than Grayson had ever experienced. Dawn found him still in the armchair, tired but at peace. For the first time in years, maybe since childhood, Grayson Bennett did not feel alone. And that simple, profound realization filled a void in his heart he hadn't known existed. 3 weeks had passed since Hayley and Caleb started living with Grayson. What was supposed to be temporary was, day by day, feeling more and more permanent. Caleb had almost fully recovered, his cough was gone, and color had returned to his cheeks. Hayley, too, seemed to blossom in a safe environment, though she still carried a layer of caution in her watchful eyes. Grayson sat in his home office, staring at his computer monitor, while the children drew pictures in the living room. A simple question from the elementary school staff the previous day had triggered his current worry. Are you the father or the legal guardian? The question came when he took Hayley to see a potential school. He stammered, offering a vague explanation about being a temporary guardian. The woman accepted his response, though her eyes showed doubt. The truth was undeniable. There was no legal basis for the current arrangement. At any moment, someone could question why these children were in his care. Worse, they could be taken away, placed into foster care. That possibility terrified him. Grayson closed his laptop and picked up his phone. There was one contact he hadn't used in years, Diana Cole. They'd met at a charity event for vulnerable children. She was a respected social worker, known for her competence and, importantly, her discretion. The call was brief. Diana, surprised by the unexpected contact, agreed to meet him that very afternoon. Will they be okay alone for a few hours? Asked Clara, his assistant, who had been helping with the kids occasionally. Actually, I don't want to leave them alone, Grayson replied. Could you stay with them until I'm back? I know it's not in your job description, but... Of course, Clara interrupted, smiling. Over the last few days, she had grown fond of the children as well. Besides, Caleb already promised to show me how to draw elephants. Grayson thanked her and headed to the living room, where Haley and Caleb were immersed in their artwork. I need to go out for a few hours, he announced. Clara will stay with you. Haley lifted her eyes from her drawing. Where are you going? To take care of something important, he said, sitting next to her. About you two, actually. The girl visibly tensed. The fear of abandonment was never far away. Are they going to send us away? She asked quietly, so Caleb wouldn't hear. Grayson took her small hand in his. No, Haley. It's the opposite. I'm going to talk to someone who can help ensure you get to stay here with me, legally. Legally? Yes. So no one can separate you or take you away, so we can be... He hesitated, searching for the right phrase. An official family. Haley's eyes widened, processing that information. She didn't smile or show open excitement, but Grayson noticed her shoulders relax, as if an invisible weight had been partially lifted. You'll come back? She asked simply. Always, he answered, the same promise he repeated every morning before leaving for work. Diana Cole's office was in an old downtown building. It wasn't flashy. A discreet sign read, Social Work Services, Diana Cole. The waiting area was warm and welcoming, with pastel walls and a corner filled with toys, hinting that many of her consultations involved children. Grayson didn't wait long. Diana greeted him personally. Mr. Bennett, it's been so long, it's quite the surprise. Diana was a middle-aged woman, her grey hair cut in a practical style, her eyes sharp behind red-framed glasses. Her handshake was firm and professional. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Miss Cole. Please, call me Diana. She motioned him into her office. On the phone, you mentioned something sensitive involving children. Her office, like its occupant, was practical and well-organized, but with personal touches revealing a warm heart. Photos of smiling children lined an entire wall. Success stories, Grayson guessed. So, Diana said, sitting down and indicating the chair opposite. How can I help? Grayson drew a deep breath and began telling her everything. Meeting. Haley selling candy. Discovering the trailer. His subsequent visits, Caleb's illness, the move into his apartment. He held nothing back. He knew any missing detail could jeopardize the process later. Diana listened attentively, occasionally jotting notes, never showing judgment. When Grayson finished, she sat in silence for a few moments, organizing her thoughts. Let me see if I understand correctly, she said finally. You found 2 children, Haley, 5, and Caleb, 3, living alone in dire conditions. You tried to help with groceries initially until the boy got sick and needed hospitalization. Now they've been living with you for 3 weeks without any legal framework. Grayson nodded, slightly uncomfortable with how matter-of-factly she summed up the situation. Sounds bad when you put it that way, doesn't it? Diana gave a small, compassionate smile. Actually, it sounds like someone trying to do the right thing, even outside official channels. She adjusted her glasses. But now we need to make it official, and there are several possible paths. She pulled out a notepad and began writing. First, we need to establish the children's legal status. You mentioned the mother left for medical help and never returned, and the father abandoned them years ago. Yes, that's what Haley said. We'll have to search for any record of the mother in hospitals, shelters, or... Diana hesitated. Unidentified fatalities. As for the father, we'll check all systems to locate him if possible. Grayson felt his stomach tighten. The idea of finding the children's father hadn't occurred to him. And if he's found, it depends. If he knowingly abandoned them, there's grounds to terminate his parental rights. Even if he claims he didn't know, he'd have to prove real willingness and capability to take responsibility. Diana made more notes. In the likely scenario, where neither parent can be found or there is clear evidence of abandonment, we have different routes. The first step is temporary custody, which allows the children to remain legally under your care while the process continues. And after that? Grayson asked, anxious. If everything is in order and you wish, we can pursue a formal adoption process. Diana studied him closely. Is that what you want, Mr. Bennett? To adopt these children? The direct question took Grayson by surprise. He hadn't even vocalized that thought to himself, but his response came without hesitation. Yes, Want them to be my children, legally, officially, permanently. Diana smiled warmly. That clarifies matters. Let's begin with a request for temporary custody first. That's the most urgent step. Over the next hour, Diana explained the process in detail. The required documents, recent medical reports for Hayley and Caleb, proof of Grayson's income and residence, criminal background checks. There will be home visits, Diana continued, to assess whether the environment is suitable, safe, and healthy. You'll be interviewed, and so will Hayley, separately. She'll be scared, Grayson commented, worried. Yes, probably. But we'll explain it to her in an age-appropriate way. She needs to understand we're not taking her away from her brother. Diana paused, looking at him. I must warn you, this can be a long process, bureaucratic and sometimes frustrating. There will be moments you'll feel invaded, judged, even irritated by the system. I'm prepared, Grayson said firmly. Good, because the system, flawed as it is, exists to protect children. Every form, every interview, every evaluation serves a purpose. She gathered the papers into a folder and handed it to him. Here's everything you need to start. Fill out these forms and come back next week. In the meantime, I'll begin searching for the parents. Grayson took the folder, feeling its weight, literal and metaphorical. It's a lot, he remarked. Diana nodded sympathetically. Mr. Bennett, Grayson, may I offer some insight? In all my years, I've seen many forms of family come together. Some by blood, some by heart, some by law. The best ones combine all three. She stood, walking to the wall of photographs. All these children found homes through processes like the one we're starting. Yes, there were forms, hearings, evaluations. She touched one photo, a smiling boy hugging a couple. Ryan here took almost 2 years for a final adoption, but you know what mattered most? He had a family who loved him the entire time. Diana turned back to Grayson. The papers and bureaucracy are necessary, but they don't make a family. What really matters you already have. A genuine desire to love and care for these kids, the commitment to stay even when it's hard, and the will to create a safe home. Her words resonated deeply. Indeed, he already felt like Hayley and Caleb's father, even without official paperwork. Thank you, he said simply, for helping, for understanding. That's what I'm here for. Diana extended her hand. We'll be in close contact from now on. Don't worry too much, you have all the qualifications for custody. The rest is just details. Leaving Diana's office, Grayson felt a mix of anxiety and relief. The road would be long, but at least now there was a clear path, a formal legal process that could turn this unexpected connection into a recognized family. He looked at the folder in his hands, documents, forms, requirements. All the things society demanded to validate what his heart already knew, that Hayley and Caleb were, in a way he couldn't fully articulate, his children. On his way home, Grayson impulsively stopped at a toy store. He bought a puzzle for Hayley. She'd shown a knack for anything that challenged her sharp mind, and a set of toy cars for Caleb, adding to the first one he'd given him back at the trailer. While the clerk wrapped them, Grayson realized he was smiling. His old life, lonely, focused only on business and acquisitions, felt so distant now, as though it belonged to another person, a different Grayson Bennett, who didn't know the sound of children's laughter filling his living room, or the feeling of tiny hands holding his. When he arrived home, Caleb ran to meet him, hugging his legs tight. Hayley stood back, observing, but there was a new brightness in her eyes, a blend of relief and hope. You came back, she said, as if she still needed confirmation. I always come back, Grayson answered, bending down to hug them both. And one day, you'll fully believe that. That night, after the children were in bed, Grayson sat in his study, starting to fill out the first batch of forms. Each line, each checked box, was a step toward a new life, not just for Hayley and Caleb, but for him as well. A life where his professional success and wealth had a bigger purpose than simple accumulation. A life where the title that mattered most wasn't CEO or billionaire, but simply dad. Morning arrived with a palpable nervousness. Grayson, who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, adjusted his tie for the third time in front of the mirror. His anxiety wasn't for himself, but for Hayley and Caleb. Today could officially make them part of his family, or shatter their young lives once more. In the living room, Caleb played absently with his red toy car, the first gift. He wore a light blue button-down shirt and dark slacks, new clothes bought for this day. His hair, now always trimmed and neat, framed a face full of color and life, nothing like the scared, sick boy from the trailer. Haley sat on the edge of the couch, her legs dangling above the floor. The navy blue dress with a white sash had been her choice, after an hour in the department store. "It needs to be serious so the judge sees we look proper," she'd explained with the solemnity of a lawyer, making Grayson smile at her mature demeanor. "Ready to go?" he asked, checking his watch. Haley nodded, her expression focused as though preparing for a crucial test. Caleb just smiled, oblivious to the day's significance but sensing the tension in the air. "It'll be fine," Grayson reassured them, more to soothe his own nerves than theirs. The phone rang. It was Diana Cole, confirming she would meet them at the courthouse. Everything was in order. They just needed the judge's final decision, which looked favorable but wasn't guaranteed. The black car glided through city streets toward the courthouse. From the back seat, Haley watched the buildings flash by, unusually quiet even for her. Caleb beside her murmured stories to his toy car. "What are you thinking about?" Grayson asked, glancing at Haley in the rearview mirror. She took a moment to answer. "What if the judge doesn't let us stay with you?" The question, so direct and filled with fear, made Grayson turn to face her. "Diana said our chances are very good. All the reports are positive. But if it doesn't work," she persisted, "where will we go?" "Haley," Grayson said gently but firmly, "no matter what happens today, I won't give up on you. If for some reason the judge doesn't grant custody today, we'll keep trying. There's no situation where I leave you behind." She nodded, not fully convinced but somewhat calmer. The trauma of abandonment wouldn't vanish overnight, and Grayson knew it. It was a process, day after day, promise after promise kept. The Kai family court occupied a stately building downtown. Tall columns and marble stairs gave it an aura of authority that was intimidating at first glance. Haley gripped Grayson's hand tighter as they climbed. Diana was waiting in the main hall, impeccable in her grey suit and white blouse, holding a thick folder of documents and reports gathered over months. The outcome of everything they'd done hinged on these pages. "Good morning, Bennett family," she greeted, smiling at the kids. It was the first time she used that term, a small gesture foreshadowing the decision they hoped for. Haley blushed slightly but didn't correct. "How are we feeling?" Diana knelt to Caleb's level, who gave a shy smile, hiding partly behind Grayson's leg. An old habit that emerged in new situations. "We're all a bit nervous," Grayson admitted, scanning the busy hall where other families waited for their own hearings. Diana nodded. "That's normal, but we have a strong case. All assessments are positive. Judge Merrick is known to be fair and to prioritize children's well-being." They walked down polished floors to room 304, Diana explaining in hushed tones how the proceedings would go. Grayson listened, absorbing every detail, though they'd rehearsed it many times. "Remember," Diana said, stopping at the door, "just answer what you're asked. Be honest and direct. No need to be nervous. We're here for the best outcome." The hearing room was smaller and less intimidating than Grayson had imagined. No jury box, just a raised bench for the judge, a few tables for the parties, and some seats for observers at the back. The walls were a neutral beige, decorated only with the court's official seal and a flag. The atmosphere was solemn, but not scary. They took seats in the chairs assigned to them. Caleb, restless after so much waiting, began to fidget. Haley, noticing, discreetly handed him a small finger puzzle they'd brought to keep him occupied. Grayson watched their interaction, once again struck by Haley's sensitivity to her brother's needs. At exactly 10 a.m., a side door opened. Everyone stood as Judge Merrick entered, followed by a young woman carrying a thin folder, the prosecutor representing the state. The judge was a man in his 60s, his grey hair neatly trimmed, his expression serious, but not stern. He wore thin-framed glasses, which he adjusted occasionally while reading documents. Something about his posture conveyed authority without arrogance. "Good morning, everyone," he said after sitting. "Case number 47329B, petition for temporary custody by Mr. Grayson Bennett of minors Haley and Caleb Miller. Present are the petitioner, the children's social worker Diana Cole, and prosecutor Dr. Martins. We may begin. The first part of the hearing proceeded methodically. The judge reviewed documents, made notes, occasionally clearing his throat as he processed the information. Diana presented reports from home visits, psychological evaluations, evidence of school enrollment, and medical follow-ups for the kids. The prosecutor asked a few technical questions regarding the search for the biological parents. "Mr. Bennett," the judge finally said, looking directly at Grayson, "I must say I'm impressed by your level of commitment to these children. It's not common to see such dedication when there's no prior family tie." "Thank you, Your Honor," Grayson replied, feeling his heart quicken slightly. "A good sign. Could you explain to the court how you met Haley and Caleb?" Grayson took a deep breath and recounted meeting Haley selling candy on the sidewalk, his subsequent visits, discovering the trailer, Caleb's illness, their eventual move into his apartment. He didn't omit the initial period where he hadn't alerted the authorities, something Diana had already explained as understandable under the circumstances. "And what is your main motivation for seeking legal custody?" Grayson glanced briefly at the children before answering. "They need stability, safety, love. I realized I want to provide all that, not just financially, but emotionally, to make official what we already feel, that we're a family." The judge nodded, seemingly satisfied. He turned to Haley, softening his voice. "Haley, may I ask you a few questions?" The girl straightened in her chair and nodded seriously. "How do you like living with Mr. Bennett?" "It's good," she replied in a small but firm voice. "He takes care of us the right way. There's always food, clean clothes, and he takes Caleb to the doctor when he needs it." "Do you feel safe there?" Haley nodded again. "Yes, he never yells at us even when I break something by accident, and he leaves the hallway light on if I'm scared at night." The judge gave a faint smile. "And your little brother, does he seem happy too?" As if he understood the question, Caleb looked at the judge and with childlike simplicity pointed at Grayson. "He's my daddy now." A stunned silence fell over the room. Haley stared at her brother in surprise. Grayson felt a lump form in his throat. Diana smiled discreetly. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as if to hide his own emotional reaction to the boy's candor. "Well, I think that answers my question." He returned to his paperwork, adopting a more formal tone. "All the reports are exceptionally positive. Material and emotional conditions exceed expectations. The only pending issue is the legal status of the biological parents." Diana stepped forward. "Your Honor, as detailed on pages 42 to 47 of the report, we conducted exhaustive searches for the father, Mr. Robert Miller, with no success. No records of his whereabouts in public or private systems for the last 3 years. Regarding the mother, Mrs. Emma Miller, we also found no conclusive trace, though there were indications she stayed in temporary shelters about 9 months ago, always in poor health." The judge nodded, flipping through documents. He looked about to speak when the courtroom door opened abruptly. A court clerk rushed over, handing him an envelope. "Apologies for the interruption, Your Honor," the clerk said quietly. "This is urgent information related to the current case." Tension filled the room as the judge opened the envelope and read. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. His jaw tightened, his brow furrowed slightly. He glanced at the children, then at Grayson. "Ms. Cole, could you approach, please?" "Approach." Diana stood and went to the bench. The judge leaned over and spoke softly so only she could hear. Grayson watched Diana's face grow pale. She nodded several times, asked one short question, nodded again, and returned to her seat. Leaning close to Grayson, Diana whispered, her voice trembling. "They found Emma Miller. She passed away 3 days ago in a public hospital on the outskirts of the city. Tuberculosis in an advanced stage, worsened by severe malnutrition. She was admitted as an unidentified patient, but fingerprint records matched her this morning." Grayson felt the air leave his lungs. He glanced at Haley and Caleb, still unaware of the news. It confirmed them as orphans, while removing the last legal hurdle for custody. It was a jarring mix of relief that the process would be simpler and sorrow for the children who had just lost their mother, officially, and guilt for feeling any relief at all. He imagined Emma Miller dying alone, likely thinking of her children until her last breath, I'll call a short recess, the judge announced, sensing the emotional impact. 15 minutes to process this new information. As soon as the judge left, Diana turned to Grayson, speaking quickly and quietly. We have to tell the children, especially Haley. She needs to hear it from us, not by chance in the hearing. Grayson nodded, steeling himself for a conversation no adult should have to have with a child. He knelt before the siblings, who were watching him curiously. Haley, Caleb, I need to talk to you about something important. Haley's face changed instantly, as though she sensed bad news. It's about us staying with you? Not exactly, it's about your mom. Her eyes widened, a mix of hope and fear. They found her. Is she coming back? The question, so full of longing, cut Grayson to the core. He took her small hands in his. Haley, remember how we talked about your mom being really sick when she left to get help? She nodded slowly. We found out she really was trying to get better to come back for you. She went to a hospital trying to heal. He paused, searching for the gentlest words. But her illness was too serious, sweetie. She fought hard, but she couldn't. Understanding dawned on Haley's face in stages. First confusion, then denial, and finally raw pain. She died? Her voice was barely audible. Yes, honey, I'm so sorry. Silent tears ran down her cheeks. No sobbing or dramatic display, just a quiet grief that tore at the heart. Caleb, only 3, didn't fully grasp death, but sensed his sister's sadness. He reached out and touched her tear-streaked face. Don't cry, Haley. The simple, loving gesture only heightened Haley's sorrow. She wrapped her arms around him, as if terrified he might disappear too. Grayson enveloped them both in a protective hug, wishing he could absorb some of their pain. Diana watched with watery eyes, giving them space to mourn. When the judge returned and the hearing resumed, the atmosphere had shifted. Haley was subdued, her face stained with dried tears. Caleb stayed close, sensing the sadness without fully understanding. Given this new information, the judge began solemnly, and all the reports presented, I'm prepared to issue my ruling. With confirmation of Mrs. Miller's passing and the prolonged absence of Mr. Miller, this meets the criteria for legal abandonment, allowing us to proceed with temporary custody. He signed documents and passed them to the clerk. Temporary custody of Haley and Caleb Miller is granted to Mr. Grayson Bennett for an initial period of 6 months, with monthly check-ins by social services. After that period, subject to favorable evaluations, we'll consider converting it to permanent custody, with the option of full adoption if you so choose. The judge's words, formal and precise, seemed oddly disconnected from the emotional weight in the room. Temporary, custody, supervision, evaluations, all bureaucratic terms that barely captured the profound transformation. The official recognition of a family formed not by blood, but by a chance encounter between a lonely man and 2 abandoned children. Any questions? The judge concluded. Grayson shook his head. Diana murmured, Thank you, Your Honor. In that case, this hearing is adjourned. As they gathered their papers, Judge Merrick approached Grayson in a more personal tone. Mr. Bennett, I've presided over many similar cases. Seldom have I seen genuine dedication like yours. These children are fortunate you found them. I'm the lucky one, Your Honor, Grayson replied, glancing at Haley and Caleb. Truly. The drive home was silent. Caleb fell asleep in the back seat, worn out by the day's emotional toll. Haley stared out the window, watching the city pass by, lost in thoughts Grayson could only guess. He didn't force conversation. He knew she needed to process the finality of her mother's passing, a truth she had probably sensed before, but now knew was irrevocably real. At home, the housekeeper had prepared a simple lunch. None of them had much appetite, but Grayson insisted they try to eat, especially Caleb, who didn't fully grasp why everyone was so quiet. That afternoon, Haley withdrew to her room with pencils and paper, her way of dealing with emotions. Grayson let her be, checking on her occasionally. Caleb played in the living room, quieter than usual, picking up on the house's mood. Early in the evening, while Grayson prepared a light dinner, Haley appeared in the kitchen holding something, the worn-out basket, the same one she'd used to sell candy, the object that had started it all. I want you to have this, she said, extending the basket. It's how everything began. Grayson dried his hands on a towel and knelt down. Are you sure? I know how important this is to you, Haley nodded. Mom gave it to me when I started selling candy. She said to take good care of it because it was how we put food on the table. A tear slid down her cheek. We don't need it like that anymore. But I want you to keep it so you remember. He accepted the basket as if it were a precious artifact, because in many ways it was. Such a simple woven thing, yet pivotal to the path that connected their 3 lives. I'll cherish it, he promised. It'll be our symbol of how this story began. Haley was silent for a moment, then asked in a near whisper, Are you staying forever? The question, so simple yet so profound, struck Grayson's heart. He knew what she was really asking. After losing her father, then her mother, would she lose him too? If you'll have me, he replied, tears glistening in his eyes. I'll never leave. Something in Haley's gaze shifted. An invisible barrier finally broke. She threw her arms around him, hugging him with all the strength her little body could muster. In the midst of the pain of losing her mother, she allowed herself to fully accept this new love, this new chance. Promise? She asked, her voice muffled against his shoulder. I promise. That night signaled a new beginning. Despite the sadness, there was also a sense of rebirth, a cycle ending so another could start. They ate dinner together, reminiscing about positive memories of her mother, laughing at stories Haley shared about Caleb as a baby. Later, Grayson read them bedtime stories until both kids dozed off. As he was about to leave the room, Haley murmured, half asleep, Stay a little longer. He settled between the 2 beds, watching them drift into deeper sleep. Caleb clutched, a stuffed dinosaur breathing steadily now. No more wheezing or coughing. Haley slept on her side, one hand stretched toward her brother's bed, as though even in dreams she had to ensure his safety. Grayson looked at the candy basket Haley had given him, placed carefully on the dresser. A symbol of their past struggle, but also of hope. Tangible proof that sometimes the greatest blessings can spring from the most unlikely encounters. As the children's breathing slowed, Grayson stayed in the chair. He had planned to leave after they fell asleep, but their quiet presence soothed him. The 2 young souls who had transformed his life now slept safely under his roof. Their loss still hurt, but the pain was shared, just as they now shared the hope of a future together. In that peaceful moment, with only the soft bedroom light and the gentle rhythm of their breathing as a lullaby, Grayson understood he would never be the same man again. He didn't want to be. He much preferred who he was becoming, not just a legal guardian, but a real father. Not by documents, but by choice, by love, by presence, an improvised family that had become real at the most unexpected time. And so, watching over his sleeping children, because that's what Haley and Caleb were now, regardless of legal terminology, Grayson finally understood the true meaning of home. It wasn't a place, it was this moment, these people. It was being exactly where he was meant to be, finally whole. 3 months passed after the court hearing. Grayson's penthouse, once elegantly impersonal like a high-end furniture showroom, had changed completely. Caleb's drawings covered the refrigerator, held by colorful magnets. Toy blocks and cars were neatly stored in bins in the living room. Children's books shared shelf space with financial reports on previously untouched bookshelves. The silence that used to reign was replaced by a symphony of sounds. Children's laughter, little feet running down hallways, kids' music playing. In the living room, lively conversations over meals. Life radiated from every corner. On this Thursday morning, Grayson shut his laptop at 8:30 a.m. after a video call with Asian investors. Clara, I'm taking the kids to school today. Could we push the board meeting to 10:30? On the other end of the line, his assistant wasn't surprised. She was used to rescheduling to accommodate school events, doctor visits, and birthdays with the same diligence as billion-dollar mergers. No problem. I'll adjust everything. And don't forget to confirm Monday's site visit for the project. The project was his newest initiative, a foundation to assist families in vulnerable situations, offering temporary housing, legal aid, and counseling, with the goal of keeping parents and children together whenever possible. Diana Cole had agreed to lead the technical team. Grayson placed his laptop in his briefcase and walked into the kitchen, where Hayley was already packing her own school bag with her usual efficiency. At 6, her sense of responsibility still amazed him, contrasting with Caleb's chaotic energy as he ran in circles with a towel for a superhero cape. "I'm Superman," he yelled, his hair still messy from sleep. "Caleb, breakfast is ready," Grayson called. "Even superheroes need to eat before saving the world." The boy stopped instantly, running to the table where a glass of milk and jelly-covered toast waited. His health was a world apart from when Grayson first met him. Chubby cheeks and boundless energy. Nothing like the sickly child he'd rescued from the trailer. "You're taking us today?" Hayley asked, carefully placing her pencil case in her bag. "I am. And I'll pick you up too." She offered a slight smile, the kind that still showed a trace of surprise whenever her expectations were reliably met. Even after months, Hayley was learning to trust that promises would be kept. "I have a math presentation today," she mentioned casually. "I know, it's on my calendar." He showed her his phone, where an alert flashed. "Hayley's math presentation, 2:30 p.m., do not miss." Breakfast was simple but lively. Caleb chattered endlessly about dinosaurs they were learning about in preschool, while Hayley meticulously cut her toast into small squares. Grayson watched them, still amazed by how such different creatures could share the same blood, and how he, with no biological connection, could love them so completely. Their morning routine had developed its own rituals. Caleb insisted on a tooth inspection from Grayson after brushing. Hayley had a specific sequence for packing her school items. There was even a triple hug before getting into the Tarka. On the drive to school, Caleb hummed in the back seat while Hayley read a chapter book advanced for her age. Another surprise, her natural talent for math and science. "You're quiet today," Grayson commented, glancing at her in the mirror. Hayley closed the book, keeping a finger to mark the page. "I was thinking about Mom." Grayson just nodded, giving her space. Mentions of her mother came in waves, sometimes days without a word, then sudden recollections. "It's Mother's Day at school," she explained. "The teacher said we can make cards for anyone special if we want to." "Do you want to make one?" She hesitated. "I think I'll make 2. One to keep for Mom, and one for Rita, because she takes care of us when you're not around." Rita, the middle-aged housekeeper, had become an important figure, especially for Hayley, who appreciated having a female presence in the home. "That's a lovely idea," Grayson said. "Your mom would be proud of how you've grown." Hayley smiled and returned to her book. It wasn't a sad smile, just thoughtful. She was learning to hold on to her mother's memory without letting it crush her. After he dropped them off with their usual hugs and promises to return, Grayson headed to the office. His workspace still had its corporate elegance, but personal touches revealed the change. Caleb's drawing in a frame, a photo of the kids as his screensaver, a calendar full of notes about school events. The board meeting centered on the new social project. Some more conservative investors frowned at the idea of channeling resources into a seemingly non-profitable venture. "Bennett, I understand your enthusiasm," one older board member in a flawless suit said, "but we need to consider financial returns." Grayson smiled calmly. "The return goes beyond finances, though it exists there too. Think of the positive PR, the customer loyalty from socially conscious clients, partnerships with public agencies." He paused. "Besides, each child we help keep with their family or find a safe home is an investment in the future. I'm talking about generational impact." His conviction was contagious. By the end, even the skeptics agreed to back the pilot program. Grayson knew his new passion for the cause was no coincidence. His experiences with Hayley and Caleb fueled every word. The following week settled into a comforting routine. Sundays became pancake mornings. Friday nights were family movie nights, complete with popcorn and blankets in the living room. Tuesdays were for cooking with the kids, a messier affair than real cooking, but always ending in laughter. One of their most cherished traditions happened spontaneously. After the nightly story, Grayson began lingering in the children's room, chatting in the dark. That's when the deepest questions arose, usually from Hayley. "Do you think my dad will ever come back? Have you ever felt as lonely as we did? If you could choose, would you want real kids of your own?" That last one caught him off guard. You are my real kids, Haley. Being a family isn't just about blood. But what if you had other kids, ones who look like you? Grayson smiled in the dim light. Maybe someday I will, biologically. But that wouldn't change how I feel about you. Love doesn't divide. So it multiplies. Haley was quiet, thinking. I think I get it. It's like when Caleb was born. Mum didn't stop loving me. She just started loving him too. Exactly. Caleb's 4th birthday marked a turning point. Grayson planned a small party at a park. Nothing extravagant, just a few preschool friends, balloons, a cake, and simple games. The point was to celebrate, not to show off. Haley helped with preparations, proud of her title as official party assistant, as Grayson called her. She checked the table decor, tested each game beforehand, and helped choose the cake flavor, chocolate and strawberry, Caleb's favorite. During the party, as the kids ran around playing, Diana approached. Grayson, given it's almost been 6 months since the provisional custody ruling, I'd say we're ready to file for permanent custody, she noted, watching Caleb giggle while trying to hit a piñata. And after that, will adoption be possible? Grayson asked, trying to sound casual, though the answer meant everything. To him, absolutely, especially given the circumstances of the biological parents and the obvious bond here. Diana smiled. Look at them, Grayson. They're your children in every way that matters. Late that afternoon, after the party, they returned home tired but happy. Caleb fell asleep in the car, hugging a plush dinosaur, his favorite present. Haley stayed awake, gazing at the passing city lights. It was a good day, she said. With her characteristic seriousness that always surprised Grayson. It was perfect. You deserve lots of days like this. Once home, Grayson carried the sleeping Caleb to his bed. Returning to the living room, he found Haley at the table, engrossed in a drawing. Can I see? He asked, sitting beside her. She showed him the unfinished sketch, 3 figures holding hands in front of a house, one big, 2 small. The sky had a large yellow sun, and in the corner a small, shining star. That's us, she explained. And that star is Mom watching over us. Grayson felt his throat tighten. It's beautiful, Haley. I'm going to put it on the fridge when it's done, but I want to write something special first. He watched her add details, colors, and finally, in neat handwriting at the bottom, my family, Dad, Caleb, and Haley. It was the first time she'd ever called him Dad in such a tangible way, something that could be held and seen. Neither of them missed the significance. It's done, she announced, satisfaction in her voice. Together they went to the kitchen and pinned the drawing to the fridge, right in the center, where it would be the first thing they saw every morning. You know what Mom used to say about family? Haley asked, adjusting the magnet to keep the picture perfectly aligned. What? That family is who stays when everyone else leaves. She looked up at Grayson, her eyes holding a wisdom beyond her years. You stayed, even when you didn't have to. Grayson knelt to her level. And I'm going to keep staying every single day. That night, after Haley fell asleep, Grayson sat in the living room with a glass of wine, reflecting on these months that had transformed his life. The candy basket, now treasured on a special shelf, reminded him of how it all began, how a random sidewalk encounter could change 3 lives forever. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Documents for permanent custody are ready. Sign. So on Monday, Grayson smiled, replying with a simple yes. Then he stood and walked to the children's room, his own personal nightly ritual, just to watch them sleep. Caleb lay on his stomach, an arm draped over his stuffed dinosaur, hair tousled across the pillow. Haley was curled on her side, her face peaceful in slumber. His children, his family, not by blood or genetics, but by something far stronger and more deliberate. Daily choices to love, to stay, to build a life together. Family, after all, is not always about who you're born with. It's about who stays day after day when leaving would be easier. It's about who turns houses into homes, strangers into kin, loneliness into belonging. Family is who stays. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.